Big wins for the Lakers and Warriors. Is it time to worry for the Kings and Wolves? We'll talk about it all next on Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Hey, what's up, guys? It is Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. I'm Gavin, Schall, your regular Saturday host, also the host of the Locked On Knicks podcast, and filling in for Rylan Stiles. He's on the West Coast. He's on vacation. It should be a holiday, but my man Jake Madison does not take time off of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. Jake, another crazy night of hoops. You've had 25 games to do in the last two nights. How are you still alive?
Look, man, I love the NBA. You said I'm on vacation. I'm on vacation being able to watch all of the games here, and we're going to recap it all in 30 minutes or less because that's what we do on Locked On NBA Game Night here.
It is a unique show, and we are super excited to get into it with you. But first, we want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And now we're off. The Warriors and the Wolves, I thought, was the biggest game of the night because these were two teams not only coming off, Jake, their worst loss of the season. I would describe them as existential losses. For Golden State, a 51-point defeat. It was the biggest defeat any team had in the NBA this entire season. For the first time in the Steph era, neither him nor Draymond Green hit a field goal in that one. The Minnesota Timberwolves have Karl Anthony Towns, who was like clowned at times in Minnesota, comes back into their building, lights them up. Dante DiVincenzo does nothing. Anthony Edwards after the game is talking about too many guys in the paint. It felt like, weirdly enough, like it's an 82-game season, no regular season game until the very end of the year is a must-win. It sort of felt like a must-win for both teams. The Timberwolves struggle in the first half. They come back. They take the lead twice. Steph Curry goes nuclear down the stretch. What do you think of this one from a Golden State perspective?
Look, they needed it, right? It's just to make you feel better because, look, they're trying to win this season, and they needed to get this one here, and they managed to, and I think that was really important. They got Steph Curry going, which is, to me, the most important thing. Look, they can make whatever trade they want to make, but as long as Steph is playing well, that's going to take them far enough as far as they'll be able to go.
Yeah, 31 points in this one for Steph, 7 threes, 11 assists. Minnesota cut it to 2. It was 96-94. And then from that point, Steph scores 11 in a row, including 3 threes that came on 4 straight possessions with just under 4 minutes left to seal this one. Much needed win for Golden State. Charlie Walter, who's covered the team for years, Locked On Warriors host, he called it the worst loss of the Steph era against the Grizzlies. So this felt essential for them. From the Minnesota side of things, another disastrous 2-quarter stretch against the Knicks. Over the second and third quarters, they scored just 41 points combined. This one, just 37 points scored in the first half. They were down 36-15. They have this crazy comeback. They take the lead twice, can't hold on to it. I don't know if you want to approach it from the angle of, like, was the trade a mistake for Minnesota? Does this team make sense as currently constituted? After a stretch of 10 games where they were the best defense in basketball and they had someone to hang their hat on, it just sort of seems like things aren't right in Minnesota.
Well, look, one thing I think that people forget at times is your offense and defense are connected. If you're struggling to score, it puts more pressure on your defense at that point in time because teams are probably going to run in transition against you. And Minnesota in this one had like an 8-minute stretch where they didn't score points. They went 0 for 12 in a row, I think, at one point during this one. But when you look at it from the lens of the trade, right? And look, you cover the Knicks here. This trade for Minnesota was not about being as competitive this year. This was a long-term trade and clearing salary from their books and having that flexibility of maybe we take a step back this year, but we'll be able to take 2 steps forward later down the line. So seeing this a little bit, I think, is somewhat expected to see their struggles when you kind of keep that in mind. They were never going to be as good as last year after trading away Karl Anthony Towns. No matter what people were saying that they might have won the trade and that Julius Randle was like the best player in that deal or what have you, they were going to take a step back. You're seeing that right now.
Yeah, I do think the most pressing immediate issue is what to do with Julius, who was their best player for long stretches against the Knicks. He can have great games, just does not really make a lick of sense with Rudy Gobert in that starting lineup. The floor is just way too cramped. And I think they thought Dante DiVincenzo would remedy some of that. He finally had a good shooting game. Maybe it gets him going, hitting just 25% from the corners this year after 46% from three on the Knicks. That is costly to them because it just sort of feels, I mean, Anthony Edwards, like he said it after that last game. I mentioned it before. He said there's 4 guys every time I drive into the lane. It reminds me of RJ Barrett quotes when the Knicks had Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson. He was saying, like, there would be nights where Mitch was out or Julius was out and he would score 40 and they'd be like, what was the difference? He's like, yeah, the lane was open and you've turned Ant, who's the best athlete in the NBA, into this incredibly high volume 3-point shooter. He's excelled doing that, but it's not what he does best. And I don't think it is the highest ceiling version of this team. Do you think there's like, is it likely now that they trade Julius before the deadline? Because he's obviously an expiring contract. You don't move off him. You don't have any interest in him. You risk that trade essentially being 1 year of Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo for Karl Anthony Towns, who's on track to make All-NBA.
Yeah, but again, it was about the salary, right? Like, if you can get something for Randall, I think that's important. But this team got them, like, they're pushing the second apron on that roster, and now they won't be in the future. And I think to them, that was it. They're a small market. It's going to be kind of different rules that you're playing by and operating by. So that trade, I think we're going to look back on it and it's like, oh, that was a weird salary dump in a sense. And that's kind of like the only way that we'll be able to kind of justify it. But as someone who covers a small market team that's going to need to do something like that, like when you're looking at it from that lens, I get it. It just sucks that, you have to trade away Towns, who's looked incredible, especially recently, and incredible against the Knicks on Thursday. That was the deal that you had to make to be able to do it.
All right, let's flip to 2 other California teams. Lakers outlast the Kings 103-99. Matt George, our good buddy, was on the scene to talk about it. We'll hear what he had to say after another tough loss for the Kings.
Things are not all right in Kingsland. If it wasn't apparent that this team is somehow broken, it is now, made even worse by back-to-back losses to the LA Lakers. There's been rumors and talk and reports galore involving Rich Paul's conversation with the Sacramento Kings. And here is De'Aaron Fox scoring over 30 points, holding up his end of the bargain, but he doesn't get enough help from his teammates. The Kings held the Lakers to 103 points. The Sacramento Kings offensively should be good enough to win any time they hold a team to 103 points, but that was not the case tonight. Once again, the Kings lose a close game in the clutch. They are now 3-10 in games decided by 5 or fewer points. And that's a big concern considering the addition of DeMar DeRozan, one of the most clutch players in the NBA, and having De'Aaron Fox, who was the first ever clutch player of the year. This Kings team just added to the list of things that they have to figure out. Oh, and to make matters worse, Tyrese Halliburton has a great chance at some revenge with the Indiana Pacers coming into town for another afternoon game tomorrow. We'll see what happens with this Kings team. Drama is swirling, and I don't know. The beam is not lit, that's for sure.
All right, weird season continues for the Sacramento Kings. Third loss in a row. He mentioned it, 3-10 in games decided by 5 points or less. They're the only team in the NBA that has or close to a winning record and under 500 at home. De'Aaron Fox and Rich Paul, apparently the quote from Sam Amick is they're reading the room. Things are weird in Sacramento. Where do they go from here, Jake?
You have to trade Sabonis, right? Like that's how this ends. If unless you're willing to go down with the ship, unless you're Monty, if you're Monty McNair, and maybe you are because you believe in the roster that you built and you want to give it time. But it feels like there's a heap of pressure on this team right now, and this team shouldn't be this bad in the clutch. They were good the past 2 years in the clutch. You added DeRozan, who's one of the better clutch players too, and you've regressed in that regard, and that just makes it feel like it's not working. And for a team that does feel like they need to kind of make the playoffs, particularly after last season, you're not trading Fox. You're not going to be able to trade DeRozan. That leaves Sabonis, and that's kind of it. And you've got to wonder if there's going to be a little bit of desperation around the trade deadline with them.
Yeah, and I think so, because it feels like we talked about this last show. Kind of feels like Monty McNair's job is on the line. This is the team he put together, and in a sense they've been quite good, right? They're borderline top 10 in net rating, top 15 offense, top 15 defense. Like you would think a top 15 defense, like Matt said it, with the offensive personnel they have, seventh best offense in the NBA, it should lead to better results. They can't seem to figure out these close games. Tonight, it was a little bit out of their control. Like there was a terrible call where a ball clearly went off Anthony Davis in the final 20 seconds. The Kings did not have a challenge. The Lakers get the ball. AD gets fouled. He misses both free throws, but here's where they only have themselves to blame. It was a dumb foul by Monk.
They
and then
didn't get the rebound.
Second best rebounder in the NBA, Domantas Sabonis, and Rui Hachimura goes over him. And that's the game. Like you look yourself in the mirror, and Matt said it, like it's only on them. But let's pivot. Maybe we'll circle back on some De'Aaron Fox trade talk, but let's pivot to the Lakers side of things. 32-7, 6 and 4 steals, vintage game from LeBron James, going downhill all night. Like it didn't even feel like he was too fast for the Kings. It felt like they didn't have anyone physically strong enough to hold up to him. The one man who could have, Sabonis, was stuck guarding Anthony Davis. The Lakers, over the last 5 games, since J.J. Redick ripped them a new one for their terrible defense, have the best defense in basketball, 4-1 over their last 5. Do you buy it? What does this mean for the Lakers?
Look, I buy that LeBron is playing well again and back with the team. And to me, that's the most important thing. Like we can look at the defense. We can look at everything else. Look, if LeBron is playing well, if Anthony Davis is playing well, that's a team that's good enough to win a bunch of games. Are they going to currently be like 5th in the West all season long? Maybe not, but that'll take you pretty far. And if you can then, tinker around the edges just with a better play, rotations, or a trade somewhere, that's going to kind of do it for him. But yeah, LeBron's back, right? Like there were questions of, did Father Time finally defeat him? And it looks like, no, not just yet. And that's going to help you win.
Awesome. We are going to get into a whole lot more. Still 10 games to talk about, including the Grizzlies. Maybe they're one of the best teams in the NBA. The Orlando Magic, a historic comeback tonight. We talk about it all next on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Prize Picks. So what is Prize Picks? Well, Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on 2 or more players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Jake, my favorite part about Prize Picks are the multi-sport entries. I'm going Jalen Brunson over 25 points. Whatever Giants quarterback is starting, over 2 interceptions whenever the Knicks and Giants are playing on a Sunday. That's been my go-to all year. The really cool thing about Prize Picks is that you allow you to make your holidays bigger and brighter. The best place to get real money action watching your favorite sports. And you can, again, win up to 1,000 times your money on any entry. And they now offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this season. And if you join this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas. I'm a Pickmas guy going forward. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 bet. Again, that's $50 instantly after your first $5 bet. Prize Picks, run your game. We also want to tell you about our friends over at Rocket RX. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost to branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. Visit Rocket RX to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off their first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's Rocket RX, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. All right, Jake, we are back on Locked On NBA Game Night. It is time to pivot to the Memphis Grizzlies, another big win. They've been arguably the best team in the NBA over the last 10 games. Let's hear about it from the expert himself, Joe Mullinax.
The deepest team in the NBA continued their reign of terror on Saturday night, beating the Atlanta Hawks without Ja Morant in the lineup. Another impressive victory, this time on the road. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and it's important to point out Trae Young didn't play for Atlanta either, so neither team was at full strength. But the Grizzlies' strength of their depth continued to be on full display. Desmond Bane continuing his bounce back, looking very much the part of the Desmond Bane of old. But it was Scottie Pippen Jr. being a fill-in and making massive production at the same time where a week or two ago, he was the guy out of the rotation. You've got Jake LaRavia continuing to ball out. You have so many contributors for this Memphis Grizzlies team, plus the usual suspects like Jaren Jackson Jr. All that with G.G. Jackson still not on the floor. Vince Williams Jr. not on the floor. Marcus Smart gets hurt in this game. The Memphis Grizzlies continue to show that they are indeed the deepest squad in the entire NBA.
So it's a bold call from Joe Mullinax, the deepest squad in the NBA. I'll do one better. They've been the best team in basketball the last 10 games since they got healthy. First in net rating, a 13-point net rating, tied with Dallas for the best offense in basketball, third best defense in basketball. Jake, you've been on the Locked On NBA airwaves for this one, for the dominant win over the Warriors. What do you make of this Grizzlies team?
So they're good, but we played real or fake on Thursday with this team, and the question was real or fake. Are they a true title contender? And I was leaning towards yes, like that's a real thing. And then I've actually watched a lot of them over the past like couple of days. I was really curious to dive into this team. They're good. And I agree that they might be the deepest team in the NBA, but that's not going to win you a title. It's going to be your starters and how they play. And when you look at this team over the past month or so, their bench unit is beating up on other bench units, and their starters aren't killing their minutes. When you look at them in terms of their player best net ratings, let me ask you this, Kevin, who's their best net rating player? Do you have a guess?
Jaren Jackson would be my guess.
No, it's Jake LaRavia, right?
Wow.
Like Jake LaRavia is not winning you an NBA title. You know, the order goes Jake LaRavia, Brandon Clark, Luke Kennard, Zach Edey, then Jaren Jackson Jr. is their fifth best player in terms of net rating when he's on the court. That concerns me. Ja Morant's a positive 0.3. Desmond Bane's a negative. Marcus Smart is a negative. And a lot of that has to do with injuries. But if your starters aren't not just winning their minutes, but killing their minutes, your depth is great when you're running with 11 guys in the regular season. But when you drop that rotation to 8, 9, and you don't get that kind of big advantage, I'm a little bit worried about them in the postseason.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I don't know if the ceiling is quite there. I will say they have the flexibility to make a move. Decent amount of draft capital going forward. So many talented young pieces on this team. Brandon Clark, as good as he is, feels like someone who's potentially movable for them. I'm interested to see if they go all in on a wing. Marcus Smart, I think, would be the contract in that type of trade. But they're a team I'm keeping my eye on as well. Let's pivot to Orlando, where the Magic had the biggest comeback in team history. A ridiculous win. Philip Rossman-Reich was there to cover it all.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, and I'm going to give you a second to catch your breath as the Orlando Magic erase a 25-point deficit, defeat the Miami Heat 121-114, complete the largest comeback in Magic history, a 25-point comeback, outscore the Heat 37-8 in the fourth quarter. And do this all undermanned, without Paolo Banchero, without Franz Wagner, without Jalen Suggs, with Wendell Carter getting ejected in the second quarter for 2 technicals, with Mo Wagner going down with what appears to potentially be a very devastating knee injury. This is as gutsy and gritty a win as it comes in the NBA, as wild a game as it comes in the NBA. The message throughout for this team was just get it to 12. Get it to 12, make it within striking distance, and then watch what happens to this Heat team. This is a test of the Magic's resolve. This is a test of the Magic's identity and who they are, and they passed it with flying colors with their deep bench carrying them. Cole Anthony with 38 points off the bench. Just an unbelievable performance, an unbelievable victory, the kind of victory that you expect from teams that are competing for championships. The Magic may not be quite in that class yet, but boy, this is a win that shows that they are moving in that direction.
Man, you got to get my boy Philip an inhaler because he's one injury away from being in the rotation, Jake. We're on the brink right now. He said it. This team, even though they had a really physical game against the Knicks, I've admired them all year long. Incredibly gutty, incredibly tough. You always hear defense travels for the Orlando Magic, even when they're at home every single night. I laughed when I heard that fourth quarter number, 37-8. Against the Miami Heat. They're down by 22 heading to the fourth. They win by 7. Just a ridiculous, borderline unique win in NBA history. Again, ties their record for all-time biggest comeback. But is there still enough, right? Before this, they'd lost 3 in a row. Obviously, no Paolo, no Franz for the foreseeable future. Now Wendell Carter, he's obviously just missed this game, but Mo Wagner potentially out for a long time. Is there still enough there for this to be sustainable?
No, I don't know, right? Like it's one game against a Miami Heat team that I think there are serious questions about right now. So they should enjoy this win, and it speaks to a level of resiliency that they have. But that can only, I think, go so far. Like, look, any win they get at this point is just great for them, and it speaks to their young players. It speaks to Jamal Mosley's their coach. It speaks to just kind of what they're building there, and I think this is going to get some guys some really good experience. It's going to show off some of their depth. There's going to only be so much I think that they can sustain this with, but they should be really proud of this win. But truthfully, to me, this is more about the Miami Heat than it does, I think, about the Orlando Magic, not to take away from their victory here.
Yeah, the Miami Heat, no Jimmy Butler, which is still a little auspicious. Maybe we'll circle back on that next week. The Heat made 8 of their first 17 3-pointers. They missed 14 of their next 15. It ultimately cost them. Jake, I rarely do this. I'm a humble guy. I'm gonna pat both of us on the back. Our two teams played tonight, and we waited until the 20-minute mark to talk about it because we were just that committed to bringing you.
Yeah, man, I want to talk about this here.
But it's fun for me, so we're gonna do it. 104-93 Knicks win over the Pelicans. I'll throw it to you first. And anything to say on this one from a New Orleans perspective?
No, I mean, I actually think a pretty disappointing loss from them. They were in complete control of this game. They were up 10 in the first half. They had Karl-Anthony Towns in foul trouble in the first half. They were kind of doing everything they wanted. And then the second half happened. The Knicks played better. Brunson got hot. But New Orleans stopped attacking. They stopped being just passive. It was a game they should have been able to win, even with all the injuries that they're dealing with. Just like more of the same from New Orleans. Like, this team's bad. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, the Knicks have struggled to put 2 great games together all season long, coming off pretty clearly their win of the season against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Cat completely fell off a cliff. I thought it was going to be in Minnesota. I thought it was going to be too much for him. Instead, he was incredible in that game. And then tonight, just you get it like once every 10 games. There's a disaster Cat game, and you live with it because he is so incredibly good the other 9 games. Jalen Brunson pretty much single-handedly saves the Knicks 7 threes with 37 points in this one. The Knicks desperately need more from their bench, just 6 bench points in this game. Mikal Bridges, man, at some point he might miss a game. Like Tom Thibodeau's pushing him. 45 minutes in this one, 82 combined for Brunson and Hart. Not going to do it against the Pelicans team that obviously has some talent, is getting healthy, but like the Knicks should be able to separate from, should be able to play their bench. I'm wondering like when the time comes that they trade Precious Achiuwa, maybe trade Mitchell Robinson for some bench scoring. It just feels like they desperately need another wing who could help them. I will note on the positive end of things, their defense that has been much maligned, I would say fairly. Admittedly, this has been against a slate of bad teams, but now 10 games, which in 30 games in the season, huge sample size. They had the 3rd best defense in basketball over the last 10 games. So that's a happy note for the Knicks. I am more than willing to end this segment on it. The Suns, though, my other favorite team, they had a horrific loss tonight to the Pistons. Maybe not horrific, but it was on the bad end of things. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Cavs blowing out the Sixers and so much more from around the NBA. Still a whole lot more to come on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Jake, I think I've cracked the code on this. All you have to do is look at the Giants line after halftime, and you just put all your money on the other team covering. It's worked for me pretty much all season long. If you want to join me in winning money on my New York Giants being terrible, visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, somehow we still have something like 7 games to get to. We are going to get rolling.
Man, it was a fun night. I enjoyed all this.
It was a blast. We're going to start off with our good friend, Nick Angad, live from Dallas. What do you got for us, Nick?
Dallas Mavericks get the win against Los Angeles Clippers. Kyrie returns, and their offense kind of returns too, in a way. Mavs get a win. Second game against the Clippers in a row. Luka Doncic didn't play in this one, again with a heel contusion, but the Mavs get insane defensive effort all around. 97 points only for the Clippers. They really just couldn't get anybody going except for Norman Powell, who was getting a lot of shots to go. He was on fire tonight, but the Mavs countered that with the offensive balance across the board. They had every single player that played except for Maxey in the rotation got into double figures, including Quentin Grimes, who had 14 points in the fourth quarter, a really great one for the Mavericks all around. Kyrie didn't really even have that great of a game. 6 of 25 from the field. Didn't get a ton going offensively, but the Mavs were able to pick it up with the balanced attack. This Mavs team has depth, and when a Mavs team has depth with Luka and Kyrie, they can do a lot of things.
Jake, we were talking about Memphis is the deepest team in the NBA. I think the Mavs might be in that conversation as well.
Yeah, I put Memphis above them, but I think the Mavs are in there. And when you have two stars like that, having that kind of like flexibility going 10 deep or so, I think is a really important thing.
All right, let's head over to Phoenix, where the Suns continue to be one of the best teams in basketball when they have their big three, and a lottery-bound team when they don't have their big three. Brendan Clean has the story.
First game of the season without Devin Booker in the lineup, but it was the defense that came up short in a 135-125 loss at home to the Detroit Pistons. Brendan Clean here from Locked On Suns as the crowd trickles out of Footprint Center in downtown Phoenix. The Suns wasted a 43-point game from Kevin Durant. They had no problem scoring the ball. Bradley Beal, one of his better offensive outputs, 11 of 20 from the field. But again, the defense comes up short. 80 points in the first and third quarters combined that they allowed to the Detroit Pistons as Cade Cunningham leads the way with 26 and 13. And the Suns need to find some way to contain the basketball, play sound pick and roll defense, find shooters in transition, find shooters, period. It has been rough sledding on that end of the floor as the Suns were a top half of the league defense last season. Somehow, some way, this year they've been bottom 10 most of the season. So they can put up 125 like they did tonight, get, 70 plus from Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant. But unless they are able to play defense against even mediocre teams like the Detroit Pistons, this season is going to go nowhere fast.
Jake, I frame that as being about no Devin Booker. Brendan thinks it was about the defense. Either way, there's a consistency lacking from Phoenix right now.
They got to do something, right? Like some sort of trade of Bradley Beal for Jimmy Butler and some deal like that seems to make the most sense. Like they're the team that just screams like, yeah, we tried it with these three guys. They never play together. We've got to do something else because what we're doing right now isn't working. But also shout out Cade Cunningham, 28 and 13 for him in this one. He might be an all-star this year.
He's been incredible, particularly the last 10 to 12 games. Another Eastern Conference team that's been amazing. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they blow out the Philadelphia 76ers. No Joel Embiid, no mask, no win. Let's go to Danny Cunningham.
Cavs got off to a little bit of a slow start. They were down by as many as 11 points in the first quarter. And then after that, the game changed completely. The Cavs picked up the pace, and Philadelphia never really had a chance once that pace switched into Cleveland's favor. Evan Mobley was terrific in this game. Darius Garland was terrific in this game. Donovan Mitchell was terrific in this game. All three of those guys played like the all-stars that they should be this season. The Cavs are an NBA best 25-4. Even against a team like Philadelphia, who isn't all that good, the Cavs just find ways to look impressive. They look impressive against good teams. They look impressive against bad teams. This team is just a monster right now. When they're clicking on all cylinders, they are borderline impossible to stop. And that's what it looked like for most of the game on Saturday night. Now they take on the Utah Jazz on Monday right here before they head out west. I will talk to you after that.
Man, Philip Rossman-Reich out of breath. Danny Cunningham walking down the court. We have guys that are closer to the league than any other podcast network. It's incredible. Jake, last time we did a show together, your buddy John popped in about 6 different times. I know you miss him, so I reached out, special request. Here's your good friend John Corrales on the Celtics getting some revenge against the Bulls.
Celtics cruise to a 25-point win in Chicago. They still haven't lost 2 in a row this season. Jayson Tatum with a 43-point, 15 rebound, 10 assists, triple-double, something that hasn't been done in Celtics history with those exact numbers. And only James Harden has had that kind of triple-double line with 9 or more made three-pointers. So historic night for Jayson Tatum. What I like about Jayson Tatum's night is that he didn't try to take over right away. He let the game come to him. First quarter was actually Jaylen Brown's quarter, and then Tatum took over in the second, and it wasn't via the three-pointer. It was by attacking. The three-point shots came later in the third quarter when he got hot, and so he just fed the hot hand, which was himself, and just started burying 3 after 3 after 3. So Tatum dominates but not in a ball dominant sort of way. What I really liked about the Celtics' performance is after a questionable defensive first half, they really locked down in the second half. They limited Chicago's three-pointers. They limited Chicago's pace in the second half, and that is really what allowed the Celtics to pull away, along with Jayson Tatum's dominance. Celtics get this win. They needed to show the Bulls that they were capable of this after a couple of close ones and a loss at home. So nice bounce back for the Boston Celtics.
The Boston Celtics, an innate ability to adapt on the fly. The Utah Jazz have now won 2 in a row. David Locke, the boss man, he is why we're called Locked On, has the story.
The Utah Jazz have their first 2-game win streak of the season, beating the Brooklyn Nets 105-94. They did it very differently than they won their first game. The first game of this 2-game win streak, they beat Detroit by scoring 48 points in the first quarter, a season high in the first quarter. Tonight, they scored a season low 19 points in the first quarter, but as the night went on, were able to take control of this game, leading by as many as 20, as Brooklyn had just a brutal shooting night. The Nets were 7 of 40 from 3. The Jazz double-teamed Cameron Johnson, their leading scorer, every single time he came off a pick or a handoff, took Johnson out of the game largely, and the Nets didn't have anyone else on the floor without Cam Thomas, without Dorian Finney-Smith, with Dennis Schroeder traded to be able to make the next play. Jazz got 21 from Lowry Market, and most of those in the fourth quarter. Colin Sexton had 18. Jordan Clarkson had 16. Jazz didn't have a particularly good offensive night, but Brooklyn's offense was so putrid that they were able to come out with the win nonetheless.
Been a rough few years in Utah. Happy David Locke's going to have some fun calling the action. 2 more games on the night. The one I want to highlight more so is the Spurs over the Trailblazers, 119-94. Jake, another just ridiculous night for Victor Wembanyama. 30 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Oh, and I almost forgot, 10 blocks for the second time this year. Is he starting to push onto the brink of MVP conversations early in his second season?
I don't think he's there yet, but look, if you're trying to set the over under per FanDuel or something like that for his career MVPs, it's 2.5 right now is what the over under number would be when it comes to something like that. It's pretty silly, the talent that he has. This is his second 10 block game, which is absurd. This is a guy who's he's already in the top half of 5x5 games ever either. It's just wild to see how good he is, and you're going to see that Spurs team in all of the trade talk because they can put an exceptional point guard, a De'Aaron Fox, next to him, and you'll hear that one coming up soon. Oh my goodness, is that team going to be so much fun to watch and the bane of the rest of the league's existence?
Yeah, and he's just gotten better every single month this year. I mean, you look at this month, he's at, let me find it in my notes, 27 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks. He is
not fair, man.
Again, and it's not going to happen because they're just not going to win enough games this year. But he's playing and he's having an MVP type month. If he can sustain that, I don't know. Let's shout out the Milwaukee Bucks. I heard people throwing out the curse of Darvin Ham after they lost their first game after winning the NBA Cup. You know how you cure the curse of Darvin Ham? You play the Washington Wizards 112-101 over the Wizards. Bobby Portis goes off 34-10, 8 and 3 steals, and a make-right game for the Milwaukee Bucks. Jake, this was a make-right podcast for us. Both tired. End of the holiday season or middle of the holiday season, but we've both been traveling a lot, man. Thank you so much for filling, and this was a whole lot of fun.
No, this was fun. I was happy to be on here. It's nice to relax and just comment. I'm enjoying it. Happy to be on with you anytime, my man.
All right, cool. We're going to wrap this one up. This was Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. We'll talk to you soon.